Good morning, everyone. So today is June 8th, Monday, and today's editorial has some very important pieces. One is testing times, and the other is missed call. And both these are discussing important economic and environmental issues facing India, and I'll explain them in very simple language. The first one is testing times. India's economy is doing reasonably well right now, as per this editorial, but there are several warning signs, and it suggests that there may be tougher times ahead. India's GDP growth is estimated at 7.7%, which is marginally higher than the 7.6% predicted by the government in February. Now, even after the tensions in West Asia began in March, the growth is strong. It means that Indian economy has shown resilience and has not been badly affected by the global instability. Now, the second thing the editorial talks about is the manufacturing and services are growing well. These are positive signs because they create jobs and they also generate income. Now, third thing that this article talks about is that the people are spending more. It talks about the private final consumption expenditure and gross fixed capital formation. Now, the private final consumption expenditure is basically household spending. People are buying more goods and services than before. And it is important because consumer spending drives businesses, and businesses hire more workers when demand increases. The next thing that the article talks about is gross fixed capital formation. This refers to investment in factories, investment in machines, infrastructure, equipment. So higher investment today means economic growth tomorrow. The good news is accompanied by the second paragraph, which talks about some bad news, which is about agriculture sector. And we have to read this paragraph with the next editorial for our purpose. Now, in this paragraph, it is said that agriculture growth fell from 4.2% in 2024 to 3% in 25-26. And this is a worrying trend because agriculture still employs the largest number of Indians. Slower growth hurts rural incomes. And monsoon may be weaker, and the IMD department has predicted rainfall may only be 90% of long period average, which is talked about in this editorial piece. Now, the title of the second editorial is Missed Call. And the title is so because of the fact that the monsoon reached Kerala on June 4. It arrived later than expected. IMD's forecast about the arrival date turned out to be wrong. The editorial says that the forecasting error itself isn't the real problem. The bigger concern is what happens during the next 4 months. Now, IMD expects a below normal rainfall. IMD predicts rainfall at 90% of the long period average with 60% probability of an outright deficient year. Now, this year's forecast is the most pessimistic forecast in about 10 years. Most of the India may receive less rainfall. Only Northeast India is expected to receive normal rainfall. And rainfall shortages are expected in Northwest India, Central India, Peninsular India. And this is the region which grows most of India's food. Distribution of rain matters more than total rain. This is the most important point in this editorial. Now imagine the rainfall is normal overall, but it pours heavily for a few days and then there's no rain for several weeks. Farmers will suffer. And this editorial says that the long dry spells are often more dangerous than slightly lower total rainfall. Crops need regular water and not just occasional flooding. That is why the monsoon is important, because India is already facing an input crisis. Because there is the West Asia conflict. Recent conflicts affected oil supplies, fertilizer production, shipping routes, and this is making farming more and more expensive. If the West Asia conflict is overlapped by a deficit monsoon, this will be a double burden on the farmers. Now, in the last paragraph, El Nino is mentioned. El Nino is a climatic phenomenon in the Pacific Ocean, which causes weaker Indian monsoon and drought-like conditions. Historically, around 60% of El Nino years produced deficient rainfall in India. For example, there was 2002 drought, 2009 drought, and there was a weaker rainfall in 2014 and 15. Now, why can't India simply hope for improvement later? Sometimes another weather pattern called Indian Ocean Dipole can offset the El Nino and can give India a better rainfall. But we cannot just assume that this Indian Ocean Dipole will happen. Government has to prepare for the worst case scenario. And what should the governments do? Well, this article suggests that farmers need to be guided towards drought-resistant crops. They need to be encouraged towards pulses, oilseeds, and millets over thirsty paddy. Thirsty paddy is because paddy is water-guzzling crop. The second suggestion is that there needs to be a groundwater management. We need to avoid excessive pumping of groundwater, and water reserves may be needed later. Third is that we need to improve our reservoir management. We need to store water efficiently and prepare for shortages. Fourth is that we need to strengthen crop insurance. Farmers should receive protection if crops fail. We also need to prepare for severe heat waves. Less rain usually means hotter temperatures and more heat stress. Greater pressure will be there on water supplies. So, India recently expected a record Kharif harvest, and the editorial says optimism is fine, but the governments must prepare for adverse conditions. A weak monsoon is going to hit farmers, food production, water availability, rural income, inflation. Therefore, preparation is of utmost importance. There's also another fact that corroborates with the fact that we need to prepare well. Almost 535 farmers have died using pesticides in Rajasthan, and it was because of unsafe use of pesticides. This fact corroborates with the fact that farmers need to be taught with safe practices so that their lives can be saved. Unsafe practices, along with El Nino, and that is a weaker monsoon and lower crop yield, is going to pose a double whammy on farmers along with the West Asian crisis.